Hello everyone! Welcome to the video course English File Pre-Intermediate 4th edition. Lesson number 40, Unit 12, Part A. It's called Unbelievable. In this series of videos, as you know, I'm helping you go through this wonderful textbook. There are 4 parts in today's lesson, and this lesson begins with reading and vocabulary, where you read 3 stories and put the events in the stories in the correct order. What happened first, what happened later. You also study time expressions in the stories. In grammar, you're going to look at the past perfect, a new tense for you that helps you to order events while telling or writing a story. In pronunciation, you'll practice pronouncing the letter I when it's surrounded by consonants. For example, drive, it's I, but signal, it's pronounced as E. You'll see it. Finally, there is a speaking part where you need to retell stories. It's an important skill to have, but if you don't want to retell, you can just answer some questions and work with these stories. But before we start, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who is supporting my channel. And remember, these lessons are available only because of you. So if you want to see more episodes, please join my Boosty or use donation alerts. You can find all the links in the description. Check my Telegram channel, VK public group, and subscribe. It's very important. By now, let's get started. Part 1. Reading and vocabulary. Time expressions. It's time to read some short stories. They're fun and easy to follow. Speaking of tasks, there will be 2 of them. The first task, you just read and listen to the stories and try to match them to headlines. There are 3 headlines: left behind, false alarm, in the post. First, try not to pay much attention to unknown words or phrases. It's better to focus only on the main idea of the stories. It's like warm-up reading. Good luck with this first task. Story 1. Last Sunday at about 2 a.m., police in Sydney, Australia, received several phone calls about shouting and loud noises that were coming from an apartment in a suburb of the city. The callers had heard a woman screaming and a man shouting, "I'm going to kill you! You're dead!" and somebody throwing furniture. A police car went to the apartment immediately. A man opened the door. "Where's your wife?" the officer asked. "I don't have one," the man replied. "Where's your girlfriend?" "I don't have one," the man replied again. The officer told the man that his neighbors had heard shouting and screaming. "Come on, what have you done to her?" the officer asked. "It was a spider," the man replied. "A really big one." "What about the woman who was screaming?" "Yeah, sorry, that was me," the man said. "I really hate spiders. I was trying to kill it." The police looked around the apartment and confirmed that nobody was hurt, except the spider. Story 2. A woman in Worthing, West Sussex, got a big surprise yesterday when she opened a large box of DVDs that she had bought on eBay, and a cat suddenly jumped out. The cat, called Cupcake, had got into the box 8 days earlier, when her owner, Julie Baggett, was packing the box to send to her customer. Julie didn't notice that Cupcake had climbed into the box and fallen asleep. Julie's customer called the RSPCA, who collected the cat and took it to a vet. Dr. Ben Colwell, who treated Cupcake, said that she was very frightened and very thirsty. The cat had survived the 260-mile journey with no food or water. Luckily, Cupcake had a microchip in her neck, so the vet found Julie's details and phoned her. Julie had been very sad about losing her cat. She had put up posters and looked for Cupcake for days. "I feel terrible," said Julie. I put the DVDs in the box and I closed it straight away, so I don't know how she got in there. It was a miracle she was alive. Story 3. An Argentinian family was driving home after a holiday in Brazil when the husband, Walter, made an unfortunate mistake. He stopped at a petrol station, filled up the car with petrol, and went to the toilet. But when he drove off, he didn't notice that his wife Claudia wasn't in the car. Claudia had been asleep in the back seat. While her husband was in the toilet, she woke up and went into the shop to buy some cookies. But when she came back outside, she found that her husband had left without her. The couple's 14-year-old son didn't notice that his mother wasn't there because he was playing on his phone in the front seat. Walter only realized his wife wasn't in the car after he'd driven 100 kilometers. Meanwhile, Claudia tried to phone him, but she couldn't get a signal, so she asked the petrol station manager for help. He contacted the local police, who took her to the police station. Her husband eventually returned to pick her up 2 hours later. When he arrived, Claudia was so angry that all she could do was scream and kick the car. So, the first story's headline is False Alarm. False alarm, it's a situation when people wrongly believe that something dangerous or unpleasant is happening or will happen, and people are wrong about that. That's why it's a good headline for this story. The second story's headline is In the Post, because in the story, the woman discovered something in the post, in the box that was delivered to her. The third story's headline is Left Behind, because the woman's disappearance wasn't noticed by her husband and son, so she was left behind. Their attention, something like that. And that's all for the first task. As you see, this one was quite easy. Now, let's move on. Part C. Read the stories again. For each story, put the events in the order that they happened. Story 1. The police arrived at the apartment. The neighbors heard someone screaming. The man explained what had happened, and the man killed the spider. Look, at first sight, this task looks very easy, But there can be some things that you need to get from the whole story, not only from the sentences. So listen and read these stories carefully again and put the events in the correct order. To make it more comfortable for you, I'll split this task into 3 pieces, like text 1, then the answer, text 2, then the answer, and text 3, then the answer. Now, good luck with this task. Story 1. Last Sunday at about 2 a.m., police in Sydney, Australia, received several phone calls about shouting and loud noises that were coming from an apartment in a suburb of the city. The callers had heard a woman screaming and a man shouting, "I'm going to kill you! You're dead!" and somebody throwing furniture. A police car went to the apartment immediately. A man opened the door. "Where's your wife?" the officer asked. "I don't have one," the man replied. "Where's your girlfriend?" "I don't have one," the man replied again. The officer told the man that his neighbors had heard shouting and screaming. "Come on, what have you done to her?" the officer asked. "It was a spider," the man replied. "A really big one." "What about the woman who was screaming?" "Yeah, sorry, that was me," the man said. "I really hate spiders. I was trying to kill it." The police looked around the apartment and confirmed that nobody was hurt, except the spider. The neighbors heard someone screaming. Actually, it was done for you as an example, so there is no need to put any comments here. The second event is the man killed the spider. It happened before the police had arrived. Because the man stopped screaming, he was calm, it means the problem was gone at that moment. The spider was killed. As I have already mentioned, the third event is the police arrived at the apartment. And finally, the man explained what had happened. That's all. Let's move on to the story number 2 in the post. Story 2. A woman in Worthing, West Sussex, got a big surprise yesterday when she opened a large box of DVDs that she had bought on eBay, and a cat suddenly jumped out. The cat, called Cupcake, had got into the box 8 days earlier, when her owner, Julie Baggett, was packing the box to send to her customer. Julie didn't notice that Cupcake had climbed into the box and fallen asleep. Julie's customer called the RSPCA, who collected the cat and took it to a vet. Dr. Ben Colwell, who treated Cupcake, said that she was very frightened and very thirsty. The cat had survived the 260-mile journey with no food or water. Luckily, Cupcake had a microchip in her neck, so the vet found Julie's details and phoned her. Julie had been very sad about losing her cat. She had put up posters and looked for Cupcake for days. "I feel terrible," said Julie. "I put the DVDs in the box and I closed it straight away, so I don't know how she got in there. It was a miracle she was alive." The first event here is Julie lost her cat. So yeah, it was mentioned in the text later, but anyway, it was the first event in the story. Julie couldn't find her cat. Then she put up posters. As you remember, the cat wasn't with her for a week, and of course she started looking for the cat immediately. The cat was still on its way at that time. Then the cat jumped out of the box and it was taken to a local vet. Then the vet contacted Julie. It was the last thing in this sequence of events. I hope you get everything right. Let's move on to the third story, Left Behind. Story 3. An Argentinian family was driving home after a holiday in Brazil when the husband, Walter, made an unfortunate mistake. He stopped at a petrol station, filled up the car with petrol, and went to the toilet. But when he drove off, he didn't notice that his wife, Claudia, wasn't in the car. Claudia had been asleep in the back seat. While her husband was in the toilet, she woke up and went into the shop to buy some cookies. But when she came back outside, she found that her husband had left without her. The couple's 14-year-old son didn't notice that his mother wasn't there because he was playing on his phone in the front seat. Walter only realized his wife wasn't in the car after he'd driven 100 kilometers. Meanwhile, Claudia tried to phone him, but she couldn't get a signal, so she asked the petrol station manager for help. He contacted the local police, who took her to the police station. Her husband eventually returned to pick her up 2 hours later. When he arrived, Claudia was so angry that all she could do was scream and kick the car. Here we go. The first event is Walter went to the toilet. Then Claudia woke up and went into the shop to buy some cookies. Then Walter got back into the car and drove off. And only after that he realized what had happened, he saw that his wife hadn't been in the car all that time. That's all for this task. Part D. Look back at the stories and complete the sentences with time expressions. Number 1. A police car went to the apartment. Number 2. A cat jumped out. Number 3. I put the DVDs in the box and I closed it. Number 4. Claudia tried to phone him. Number 5. Her husband returned 2 hours later. I'm sorry that these texts are very small on the screen. Anyway, try to remember the sentences, what is missed there. If you can't, it's okay, just move to the answer section and have a look at it. Part E. Match the time expressions in D to their meaning. Number 1. Quickly and unexpectedly. Number 2. After a long time. Number 3. While something else was happening. And number 4. Without delay. I think the task is clear. You have 5 gaps in 5 words. Pay your attention to the fourth meaning as it has 2 words to put there. 1 meaning for 2 expressions. Without delay. Good luck, do it, then check your ideas and learn these time expressions. Теперь самое время перевести и разобраться с лексикой. Прошлую субботу, около 2 часов, получается, ночи, полиция в Сиднее, Австралия, получила несколько телефонных звонков, которые были про крики и громкие шумы, громкие звуки, которые, получается, шли из квартиры в пригороде города. То есть где-то не в центральной части имеется в виду. Suburb — это у нас окраина, пригород, около того. То есть те, кто звонившие, точнее даже вот так вот, звонившие слышали, как женщина кричала, и мужчина орал. «Я собираюсь убить тебя! Ты мертв!» Или «Ты мертва!» Там уже непонятно в английском. И кто-то throwing furniture бросал мебель, то есть кидался мебелью. Полиция, получается, или полицейская машина поехала в эту квартиру immediately, то бишь сразу, без промедления. Мужчина открыл дверь. «Где твоя жена?» — спросил офицер полиции или полицейский. «У меня нет жены». Мужчина ответил. «Где твоя девушка?» «У меня нет девушки», — мужчина ответил снова. Так, полицейский у нас рассказал мужчине, что его соседи слышали, получается, оры и крики. То есть shout — это просто громко говорить, можно так сказать, как ор, а scream — это именно крик, вот этот вот душераздирающий. Так, ну же, что ты сделал с ней? Полицейский спросил. Это был паук, мужчина ответил. Очень большой паук, really big one. А что насчет женщины, которая кричала? А, да, это был я, мужчина сказал. Я очень-очень ненавижу пауков. Я пытался убить паука, имеется в виду. Полиция оглядела вокруг, или в целом огляделась, или провела обыск квартиры, и confirmed, тут вот это вот слово довольно новое, подтвердила, то есть это подтвердить, что никто не был, ранен, или никто не пострадал. То есть hurt — это как болеть, быть раненым, пострадавшим. Так, except the spider — это слово кроме, то есть кроме паука. Тут вот такая лексика, можно ее отсюда взять. Дальше у нас. Да, здесь у нас было RSPCA. Это у нас, получается, Королевское общество для того, чтобы предотвращать жестокое обращение с животными. То есть такая вот организация, которая работает с животными, грубо говоря. Так, смотрим вторую историю. Она у нас начинается так. То есть женщина в этом месте, не буду уж произносить, got a big surprise, то есть имеется в виду, получила... дословно, да, давайте перейдем, получила большой сюрприз вчера, когда она открыла большую коробку DVD которую она купила на eBay, и кошка внезапно, то есть вдруг внезапно jumped out, выпрыгнула. Получается, кошка по имени Cupcake, у нас это ее кличка, получается, забралась в коробку 8 днями ранее, когда ее владелец, Джулия Бэггет, то есть упаковывала или паковала коробку, чтобы отправить ее клиенту. Джули, получается, не заметила, как вот этот капкейк, получается, забралась в коробку и уснула. Дальше у нас клиент Джули позвонила в эту организацию, которая collect, да, что такое, просто забрала кошку и отвела к ветеринару. Доктор Бен, вот этот доктор, который лечил капкейк, то есть он ее лечил, treat — это кого-то лечить, сказал, что, не совсем даже лечить, осматривать, лечить, в общем, к докторам это слово тоже относится. Сказал, что она была очень напугана и очень хотела пить. То есть ее мучила жажда. Кошка, получается, пережила путешествие, получается, 260 миль, чуть больше 300 километров, без еды и воды. Luckily, это у нас к счастью, то есть к счастью, в капкейке был микрочип на ее шее, то есть в ее шее был микрочип, поэтому ветеринар выяснил все детали, то есть куда позвонить, как с кем контактировать, имеется в виду детали Джули, и позвонил ей. Джули, получается, had been very sad about losing her cat. Все это время Джули, она грустила или была опечалена про то, что она потеряла свою кошку. Она, получается, had put up posters, то есть она развешивала постеры и искала капкейк, то есть вот эту кошку for days, имеется в виду целыми днями. «Я чувствовала себя ужасно», — сказала Джули. «Я, получается, положила DVD в коробку и закрыла эту коробку straight away», это имеется в виду сразу, без промедления, то есть положила и закрыла. Поэтому я не знаю, как она, то есть та кошка, проникла туда. Это было чудо, то, что она выжила. Miracle — это другое слово, это чудо. Так, со второй историей все. Давайте к третьей. Тоже довольно интересно. То есть фамилия из Аргентины. То есть ехал на машине домой после каникул или отпуска в Бразилии, когда муж, Уолтер, то есть made an unfortunate mistake, то есть совершил ошибку, unfortunate, очень злую, грубую ошибку, то есть грубый просчет, так можно сказать. Либо unfortunate имеется в виду, ему очень сильно не повезло. То есть, помните, это слово unfortunately, это к несчастью. То есть, это такая несчастливая ошибка. Он остановился у заправки, наполнил машину бензином и пошел в туалет. Но когда он отъехал, то есть уехал, он не заметил, то есть слово notice на всякий случай, повторите это на замечать, что его жена Клаудия не была в машине. Клаудия все это время, получается, спала на заднем сидении, in the back seat, тоже можете выделить, если говорите про машины, на заднем сидении. В то время, while, это в то самое время, пока ее муж был в туалете, она у нас, получается, проснулась и пошла в магазин, чтобы купить немножко печений. То есть там пачку или так, немножко печенюшек. Но когда она вернулась, то есть, получается, вышла из магазина или вернулась наружу, outside, это наружу, она обнаружила, что ее муж, получается, уже уехал без нее. А the couple, то есть вот этой пары, 14-летний сын, не заметил, что его мама не была в машине, потому что он играл, то есть в это время он играл в свой телефон на переднем сидении, in the front seat, то есть тоже на переднем сидении. Уолтер только понял, что его жена не была в машине после того, как он проехал 100 километров. Meanwhile, хорошая фраза, в то же самое время Клаудия пыталась дозвониться ему, но она не могла получать сигнал. Имеется в виду, связь была плохая, не могла дозвониться. Поэтому она попросила управляющего заправки о помощи. Он, получается, связался с местной полицией, которая забрала ее в полицейский участок. Ее муж eventually можно перевести, как в конце концов, или по итогу, вернулся, чтобы ее забрать 2 часа спустя. И когда он прибыл, Клаудия была такой злой, что все, что она могла делать, это было кричать и бить машину. Kick — это именно пинать, бить ногой машину. То есть она кричала и пинала. Вот такие вот 3 истории. Надеюсь, теперь некоторые моменты прояснились. Надеюсь, это было полезно. Давайте с вами двигаться дальше. Впереди у нас грамматика. Number 2. Grammar. Past perfect. Part A. Look at a sentence from one of the stories. Which action happened first? Number the sentences 1 and 2. Walter only realized his wife wasn't in the car after he'd driven 100 kilometers. Walter realized his wife wasn't in the car. Walter drove 100 kilometers. And part B. What do you think? Apostrophe plus D is a contraction of. What form of the verb is driven? Wow, a lot of grammar words here. Look, again, try to do this task, but if you can't understand the idea of what you need to do, it's okay, just skip it and move to the main section. This exercise, it is just a warming up exercise before the main grammar part. So let's see. Which action happened first? Number the sentences 1 and 2. Actually, the first action here, Walter drove 100 kilometers. And only then Walter realized his wife wasn't in the car. Speaking of part B, what do you think? Apostrophe plus D is a contraction of. What form of the verb is driven? You might think that it is a contraction of would, as you did it in the past, in the previous lessons, I mean. This is impossible as would is followed by the infinitive and not the past participle. And this form, had plus past participle, is called the past perfect. And apostrophe plus D is a contraction of had. So, after he'd driven 100 kilometers, the full form is after he had driven 100 kilometers. And speaking of the verb driven, it is a past participle. Drive, drove, driven. Now look, part C. Underline 2 more examples of the past perfect in each story. Now you're going to look at the stories one more time. Try to find more examples of the past perfect. If the texts seem to be very small on your screen and you can't do this task properly because of it, you can skip it. One more thing, stories 2 and 3 have lots of examples, but you only need to underline 2 in each maximum. But if you want a challenge for yourself, you can try to find all of them. Good luck!
.1 When I woke up, the garden was all white. It had snowed during the night.
I suddenly realized that I'd left my phone in the taxi.
We got home just in time. The match hadn't started.
When she got to class, she realized that she hadn't brought her book.
I went to Paris last weekend. I really loved it.
Had you been there before?
No, I hadn't.
Let's read these rules. We use the past perfect when we are already talking about the past and want to talk about an earlier past action. It's like what happened first or before. When I woke up, the garden was all white. It had snowed during the night, so it snowed before I woke up. It was the first action in this sequence. Then we make the past perfect with had or hadn't plus the past participle. Next, the form of the past perfect is the same for all persons. It means I had, she had, we had, they had, and so on. You don't change it. And the last one, had, is sometimes contracted to apostrophe plus D, like I'd, he'd, she'd, and so on. Had or would. Be careful, apostrophe plus D can be had or would. I didn't know that you'd found a new job. So it's like, I didn't know that you had found a new job. But if you went by taxi, you'd get there much quicker. Here is like, if you went by taxi, you would get there much quicker. Now study these rules carefully, then we will move on to the exercises. So, exercises. Part A. Match the sentence as. I couldn't get into my flat because I'd lost my keys. Or I had lost my keys, full form. And you see, like when our friends arrived, we hadn't finished cooking the dinner, and something like that. You will do the others. Part B. Complete the sentences. Put the verbs in the past simple or past perfect. Oh, that's interesting. So I hope you remember about the past simple, like did, didn't, ed, and past simple form. How to do it? You need to understand which action happened first. If it happens first, you must put it in the past perfect. If it happens later, you must put it in the past simple. Like you see, we didn't get a table in the restaurant because we hadn't booked. Hadn't booked was earlier. Number 1. Here you see we have two verbs, change and not recognize. So I think Caroline had changed a lot and I didn't recognize her. So why I didn't recognize her? Because she had changed a lot. Earlier. This action was the first one, or happened earlier than the second action. I hope you get the main idea how to do it. Now try to do these exercises to complete them, then check yourself. And now let's have a look at the answers. Follow this pattern. The first action that happens in the sequence usually comes in the past perfect, and the other actions just usually the past simple things. So let's look at it. I couldn't get into my flat because something had happened first. I'd lost my keys. So this, or you can say that action, no, this action happened first. Then I couldn't get into my flat. Number 1. When our friends arrived, I think the answer is G. We hadn't finished cooking the dinner. Number 2. I took the jacket back to the shop because something had happened. Yes, because I'd bought the wrong size. Jill didn't come with us because she'd made other plans. At that moment, she had already made other plans. Number 4. I turned on the TV news to see what had happened. Somewhere. I don't know. Number 5. He was nervous because it was the first time he'd flown. It's E. So actually, he had never flown in his life before that moment. In the past, of course. That is why we use the past perfect. Number 6. When I got to the supermarket checkout, I realized that I'd left my wallet at home. So, it happened first, this happened later. That is how it works. So, let's see the answers now. I couldn't get into my flat because I'd lost my keys. When our friends arrived, we hadn't finished cooking the dinner. I took the jacket back to the shop because I'd bought the wrong size. Jill didn't come with us because she'd made other plans. I turned on the TV news to see what had happened. He was nervous because it was the first time he'd flown. When I got to the supermarket checkout, I realized that I'd left my wallet at home. So I think the exercise A was easy. Now let's move on to exercise B. Complete the sentences, put the verbs in the past simple or past perfect. We just put here something that happened first in the past perfect and something that happened then later in the past simple. Like, we didn't get a table. Why? In the restaurant. Yeah, why? Because we hadn't booked, a table or something like that. We hadn't booked. Caroline had changed a lot and I didn't recognize her. Sometimes we can express or show the reason of something. Why I didn't recognize her? Because she had changed a lot earlier. So this action, of course, happened first. Next, my friend phoned me, or just phoned to tell me that I had left my coat in his car. So this happened first, then this one. When I turned on the radio, the news had already finished. In this case. Oh, what is it? Yeah, now it's good. Number 4. She didn't lend me the DVD because she hadn't watched it yet at that moment. The bar had closed by the time we arrived. So this action happened first. Number 6. When we got home, we saw that somebody had broken the kitchen window. And number 7. When we got up in the morning, we saw that it had snowed in the night. So the first action, it had snowed, then people got up, and then they saw. When we have just a sequence of actions like first, second, third, we just use the past simple. This one. But when we want to show that something had happened first or before the other actions, we use the past perfect here. So let's read just answer keys in B. We didn't get a table in the restaurant because we hadn't booked. Caroline had changed a lot and I didn't recognize her. My friend phoned to tell me that I'd left my coat in his car. When I turned on the radio, the news had already finished. She didn't lend me the DVD because she hadn't watched it yet. The bar had closed by the time we arrived. When we got home, we saw that somebody had broken the kitchen window. When we got up in the morning, we saw that it had snowed in the night. The past perfect isn't easy, so you need just more practice to get the idea how to use it and when to use it, but you'll see it in the future. Part E. Complete the sentences in your own words. Use the past perfect. When I got to the airport, I suddenly realized that... Okay, let me do it first. Yes, usually. When I got to the airport, I suddenly realized that I hadn't eaten anything before setting off. It made me sad because airport's food costs a fortune. Or just costs a lot, in this case. Something like this. Number 2. When we arrived back from our holiday, we found that we hadn't locked our door. Number 3. When the film started, I immediately realized that I had seen that film before and it was awful. Number 4. I couldn't answer any of the exam questions because I had drunk 10 cans of beer the night before. And number 5. We spent 20 minutes in the car park looking for the car because we couldn't remember. Look, I think I won't complete the last one because it's actually only one good continuation here and it will be a spoiler for you if I do it. Now use your own ideas and complete the sentences. Just have some fun. Part 12a. What had happened? Now you're going to do this task. You have some sentences where the verbs in the past perfect are missed. Here is a clue. If you see a plus, it means the verb is positive. You use had plus the past participle. If you see a minus, it means the verb is negative, so you use hadn't plus the past participle. Let me give you an example. Number 1. Diana was very angry because her husband, a negative verb here, the dinner. So I think he hadn't done something, yeah? Why could Diana be angry? Maybe because her husband hadn't cooked, or you can say as well, hadn't made the dinner. Let's just read the other sentences, and after that, you're going to guess the missing words. Number 1. Diana was very angry because her husband hadn't cooked the dinner. Number 2. We went back to see the house where we had done something when we were children. Number 3. He couldn't catch the plane because his passport. He had done something with his passport. Number 4. The flat was very dirty because nobody had done something with it for a long time. Number 5. We went back to the hotel where we on our honeymoon. Number 6. The cat was hungry because it, a negative verb, anything for 2 days. Number 7. After I left the shop, I suddenly remembered that for the jacket. You see, there is a preposition for. Number 8. I ran to the station, but the last train. Number 9. Miriam was happy to hear that the exam. Number 10. I didn't want to lend Jane the book because it's a negative verb here, at. And number 11. Jack was angry because him to my party. And number 12. They got to the cinema late and the film. Try to guess these verbs. Have fun, then check your ideas. And look, if your idea doesn't match what you see in the answer section, don't worry, it's okay. This task is just for fun, actually. Good luck. One. Diana was very angry because her husband hadn't cooked the dinner. 2. We went back to see the house where we had lived when we were children. 3. He couldn't catch the plane because he had forgotten his passport. 4. The flat was very dirty because nobody had cleaned it for a long time. 5. We went back to the hotel where we had stayed on our honeymoon. 6. The cat was hungry because it hadn't eaten anything for 2 days. 7. After I left the shop, I suddenly remembered that I hadn't paid for the jacket. 8. I ran to the station, but the last train had gone. 9. Miriam was happy to hear that she had passed the exam. 10. I didn't want to lend Jane the book because I hadn't read it. 11. Jack was angry because I hadn't invited him to my party. 12. They got to the cinema late and the film had started. Part 3. Pronunciation. The letter I. The letter I. The letter I is usually pronounced I before a consonant plus E. For example, drive. And is pronounced E between two consonants if there is no E. For example, mistake. Yeah, it's not like mistake, mistake. Part A. Put the words from the stories in the correct row. We have two rows, like A, like in fish, and I, like in bike. For example, you take the word alive, I, so you put it in the I row. And I think you'll be able to do the other words easily. Work with these words, then check yourself.
.2
Fish. Driven. Kill. Miracle. Notice. Signal.
Bike. I. Alive. Arrive. Outside. Spider. Surprise. Survive. While. Wife.
Part A. Look at the pictures from two more newspaper stories. What do you think the stories are about? Actually, just think about what is going to happen in these two stories. If you have no idea, it's okay, just move on to the main task. Story 1. Part A. Questions to the story. Where was the swimming pool? What kind of pool was it? Question number 2. Why did the pool assistant shout, "Get out of the water, quickly"? Number 3. What had happened in the night? Number 4. Were any of the swimmers hurt? What happened to the shark? Now listen and read, then do the questions, and then check yourself. In Sydney, early in the morning, some swimmers were having a swim in an outdoor swimming pool, which was very close to the sea. The swimmers were very surprised when suddenly the pool assistant started shouting, "Get out of the water, quickly!" The swimmers immediately got out. Then they realized that there was a shark at the other end. A large wave had carried the shark into the pool overnight. Fortunately, none of the swimmers were hurt, and the shark was caught in a net and put back into the sea. Let's have a look at the answers. Number 1. Where was the swimming pool? What kind of pool was it? The swimming pool was in Sydney, close to the sea, and it was outdoors. Such kind of pool. Number 2. Why did the pool assistant shout, "Get out of the water, quickly"? So the pool assistant shouted, "Get out," because there was a shark in the pool, actually. And number 3. What had happened in the night? A large wave had carried the shark into the pool. And number 4. Were any of the swimmers hurt? What happened to the shark? No one was hurt. The shark was put back into the sea. And that's all. That's your story. Let's move on. So, story 2. Let's look at the questions. Where was the airport? Why were the airport workers surprised? Number 3. What had the old lady done? Number 4. How far did she travel on the luggage belt? Read and listen to the story, answer the questions, then check yourself. Last Monday, workers in the luggage area at Stockholm's Arlanda airport in Sweden got a big surprise. They were taking suitcases off the luggage belt to put them on the different planes, when suddenly they saw an old lady sitting on the belt next to her suitcase. The woman had got confused at the check-in desk. She had put her luggage on the belt and then had sat down on the belt herself. A spokesman at the airport said, unfortunately, she did not understand when she was given check-in instructions. She got on the belt together with her bag. Luckily, it wasn't a long ride, only a few meters. So, where was the airport? The airport was in Stockholm, in Sweden. Number 2. Why were the airport workers surprised? The airport workers were surprised because they saw an old lady on the luggage belt. Of course, everybody would be surprised in that situation. Number 3. What had the old lady done? She had got on the luggage belt with her suitcase because she was confused. And number 4. How far did she travel on the luggage belt? She only traveled a few meters. That's all for this story. Let's move on. And now a final boss, as I say, but it will be an optional task. If you find it very difficult, you can skip it. But if you like challenges, welcome to the club, buddy. I mean, now you have only these pictures in front of your eyes. Try to remember what happened and retell these two stories. You can start by saying, it happened in, when, and so on. Again, it's completely optional. You can do it or you can skip it. But anyway, I would like you to retell the stories. It's just an additional practice. But you see, there is nobody to check you, to make you do it, so it's up to you. В Сиднее рано утром кое-какие пловцы, понятно, что идет речь не о профессиональных людях, просто люди, которые плавали, то есть получается were having a swim, дословно здесь можно так и скупнулись или просто плавали в открытом бассейне. Swimming pool — это бассейн, который был очень близко к морю. Пловцы были очень удивлены, когда внезапно the pool assistant, это работник бассейна, начал кричать: «Вылезайте из воды! Быстро!» Пловцы без промедления или сразу, выбрались, то есть все повылезали. Только затем они поняли, что это была акула на другом конце. Большая волна притащила, carry — это тащить, то есть притащила акулу в бассейн или затащила акулу в бассейн overnight, то есть за ночь. К счастью, никто из пловцов не был пострадавшим, то есть никто из пловцов не пострадал или не был как-то травмирован. И акула была поймана в сетку и put back into the sea, тут как дословно, то есть отправлена, можно так сказать, обратно в море. Или ее положили обратно в море. Это вот такая история. История вторая. Прошлый понедельник рабочие в территории багажа в стокгольмском аэропорте Орландо, получается в Швеции, got a big surprise, дословно получили большой сюрприз, или опять они очень сильно удивились. Они were taking suitcases off the luggage. Смотрите, здесь take off — это снимать, то есть они снимали багаж, чемоданы с luggage belt — это у нас вот этот вот конвейер для багажа. Belts можно перевести как конвейер. То есть они снимали все эти чемоданы с конвейера, чтобы переложить их на другие, или положить их, отправить их в другие самолеты. Когда внезапно они увидели старушку, можно так перевести на old lady, старушку, которая сидела на конвейере рядом с ее чемоданом. Женщина had got confused, можно так перевести, женщина запуталась или неправильно поняла. А дальше идет где? На стойке регистрации. Она положила ее, получается, багаж на конвейер, а затем усадила себя на этот же конвейер. A spokesman, тут немножко подзабыл перевести человек, который работает с прессой, или же просто человек, который отчитывается за какие-то происшествия в аэропорту. То есть, грубо говоря, дословно, говорящий человек в аэропорте сказал, к несчастью, она не поняла, когда ей дали инструкции по регистрации, то есть check-in instructions, то есть как что сделать. Дальше она, получается, прибыла или усадилась на конвейер вместе с ее сумкой. К счастью, поездка была недолгой, то есть it wasn't a long ride. Это не была долгая поездка. Всего лишь a few meters, надеюсь, не забыли, a few — это у нас всего лишь пару метров она проехала. Вот такая вот история. Идем дальше. Part C. Which of the stories in this lesson do you find the most unbelievable? Have there been any funny or unusual stories in the news recently? What happened? Look, speaking of me, I think the story with the cat is sort of unbelievable and surprising. It's good that the cat managed to survive, but I can't imagine how afraid and desperate it was. And look, I don't know about stories in the news, but I think it will be better if you take something from your life, from your experience, so to say. You begin it like that. It happened. For example, my story, it happened 5 years ago. How I lost my cat. My mother had a birthday party with a lot of guests. And we all were very busy. Cooking, preparing, welcoming guests, and so on. Then suddenly, I realized that I hadn't seen our cat for 3 or 4 hours. Another problem was I couldn't start searching for it properly because the guests had already arrived by that moment. And after the party finished, we immediately started looking for it. We had looked at each corner of the apartment and still we didn't succeed to find it. Yeah. Another problem was that our door opened and closed lots of times, and we thought our cat could leave the place and went outside. And even by night, we hadn't found the cat yet. It was unbelievable. It seemed that he disappeared without any trace. Then my father started searching for it in the bathroom. He noticed that there was a shopping bag in the darkest corner under the bath. So we took kind of a stick or something like that and dragged that shopping bag from its place. And guess what? The cat was sleeping peacefully there. It had been there all that time. Anyway, it was a happy ending for my story. Now look, try to tell the story of your own. And remember, if you want to emphasize something, to put some stress on it, or just to say that something happened earlier than other events in your sentence, use the past perfect. For example, at that moment, I realized that I had forgotten something. Or it seemed that I had seen that person before. Or I couldn't believe that it had been there all the time. Or, I don't know, when I came home, I saw that someone had broken our window. And by the way, don't forget about the past continuous. You needed to show that an action was in progress, in process. Like, when I was walking in the park, I saw, I don't know, a big elephant running towards me. Okay, I'm kidding. Now it's your time to do it. Good luck. And it's time to look at your homework tasks in the workbook. Всех приветствую, уважаемые друзья. Давайте с вами разбирать, получается, последний юнит из цикла или из курса английский язык по учебнику English File, 4 издание, уровень про Intermediate. И у нас с вами, конечно же, юнит 12, который называется Unbelievable, то есть невероятно. Тут есть одна небольшая цитата, довольно странная. То есть for truth is always strange, stranger than fiction. Имеется в виду, что правда всегда странная, и она, более странная, чем вымысел. Такая вот цитата странная. Так, ну ладно, давайте переходить к заданиям. Первая часть у нас на слова, выражение времени. Это те самые, что мы прошли на уроке. Их там было несколько штук. Давайте посмотрим, что к чему соотносится. Вот, например, первое. I arranged to meet Jack at the cinema at 8 o'clock, but he was late. D. He eventually arrived, but the film was nearly finished. Здесь у нас выражение eventually — это в конце концов. Можно его так перевести. Второе. He was in the living room, relaxing and reading a book. Ну, тут предложение легкое. И что могло случиться, я так понимаю, suddenly there was a loud noise outside and someone was shouting. То есть там было слово suddenly, это что-то случилось внезапно, вдруг, то есть того, что мы не ожидали. Так, третье. On the way to the station, he realized he didn't have his wallet. Так, это плохая ситуация, получается. Тут подходит he turned around immediately and went back to pick it up. Он повернулся у нас, развернулся immediately, то есть сразу, без задержки, и пошел его забрать. Так, четвертое. Alice fell off her bike, and Peter was worried when he heard. Так, и получается, наверное, he phoned her straight away to find out how she was. Он сразу же ей позвонил, чтобы узнать детали. Ну и последнее у нас пятое. Frank's date with Wendy was a disaster. He was at the King's Arms and was waiting there. Получается, meanwhile, she was waiting for him at the King's Head. Так, если кто-то не понял, к чему эта вся вещь, смотрите, это у нас, я так понимаю, два названия ресторанов. King's Arms, то есть руки короля, и King's Hand, это тоже название ресторана, просто они перепутали. То есть он, получается, ждал ее в одном месте, а в то же самое время, meanwhile, кстати, хорошая фраза, брать к себе на вооружение, в то же самое время она ждала его в King's Head, то есть в другом месте. Вот такое вот первое задание. Что ж, давайте идти дальше. Ну и вполне логично. Complete the sentences with a word from the list. Eventually, immediately, meanwhile, straight away, suddenly. Собственно говоря, мы их и разбирали. Так, первое.